My name is Marcelina, and I am 29 years old. The crash didn't feel real until the car started spinning. One moment, my son Jonah was sitting in the passenger seat beside me, legs swinging slightly, talking too fast about the movie we'd just seen. He was quoting lines out of order, laughing at himself, trying to make me laugh too. The sun was bright, the road clear, traffic light. I remember glancing over at him, smiling, thinking how rare it felt to have an easy afternoon like this, just the two of us, no obligations, no errands, no one asking me for anything. Then there was a sound like an explosion. A white truck ran the red light and slammed into us from the side so hard the world tilted. Glass shattered. Metal screamed. The airbag deployed with a violent punch that knocked the breath out of me. I remember my ears ringing, my head snapping back, the car spinning as if it had lost its sense of direction entirely. When everything finally stopped moving, the first thing I heard was Jonah crying. Not screaming, crying. That sound grounded me more than anything else. I turned toward him, ignoring the pain shooting through my leg and ribs, and asked if he could hear me. He nodded, face pale, eyes wide, a thin line of blood already forming above his eyebrow. I kept talking to him, steady and calm, the way you do when you're terrified but can't afford to show it. The driver of the other vehicle stumbled out of his truck shouting slurred nonsense. He smelled like beer from 10 feet away. At one point, he actually tried to walk off before a bystander grabbed his arm and told him to sit down. Someone else called 911. At the hospital, everything blurred into fluorescent lights and clipped voices. X-rays. Questions. Blood pressure cuffs tightening around my arm. They told me nothing was broken. Bruised ribs. A sprain for Jonah. Cuts and soreness that would take weeks to fade. We were lucky, they said. Very lucky. It wasn't until things went quiet that my hands started shaking. Jonah was lying in the bed next to mine, hooked up to fluids, finally calm enough to fall asleep. His face looked smaller under the hospital lights, lashes resting against his cheeks, a bandage taped carefully above his eye. I sat there watching his chest rise and fall and felt the weight of everything I hadn't let myself feel yet crash down all at once. I picked up my phone. I typed one message into the family group chat. We're in the hospital, alive but shaken. Drunk driver hit us. I stared at the screen for a second before hitting send. I wasn't asking for help. I wasn't asking anyone to come running. I just needed them to know, to see us, to acknowledge that something terrifying had happened. The message went through, then nothing. At first, I told myself they were busy. It was early afternoon. Maybe phones were down. Maybe no one had checked yet. Then I remembered what day it was. My niece's birthday. 11 years old on the 11th. My sister had planned a big rooftop brunch downtown, the kind with mimosas, balloons, matching outfits, and carefully staged photos. I'd been invited. I'd even dropped off a gift 2 days earlier. I hadn't gone because I worked that morning and had promised Jonah a movie. So I waited. An hour passed. Then 2. Then 3. Jonah slept beside me, IV dripping slowly, and I opened Instagram without thinking. The first photo hit like a slap. My sister smiling at a long table, my parents on either side of her, cousins raising glasses, gold balloons everywhere. My dad wearing a paper crown, my mom holding the birthday girl close for a selfie, every single one of them tagged, every single one of them clearly on their phones. They had seen my message. None of them answered. Not one came. Not one asked where we were. Not one asked how Jonah was. The silence was louder than anything the crash had made. We stayed in the hospital overnight for observation. I barely slept. Every time Jonah shifted in the bed, I woke up. Every time a nurse passed by the door, I checked the monitor again, just to be sure the steady lines were still there. He woke up once around 3:00 a.m., disoriented and scared, and asked if we were going home yet. I told him soon. I didn't tell him that my phone was still silent, that the people who were supposed to care hadn't said a word. By morning, I felt hollow. Not numb exactly, but emptied out, like something essential had drained away while I wasn't looking. They discharged us early afternoon. Jonah limped slightly, favoring his ankle, and I could feel every bruise in my ribs when I helped him into the cab. The driver asked if we were okay. I said yes, because that's what you say when you don't want to explain. At home, I made soup, turned on cartoons, and sat on the edge of the couch, pretending everything was normal while my phone lay untouched on the coffee table. Still nothing. That night, after Jonah fell asleep, I scrolled back through the family chat. My message sat there, unread and unanswered, buried under photos and jokes from the brunch. Videos of my dad dancing. Comments about how perfect the day had been. A group photo of all of them holding up gold balloons and smiling like nothing else in the world mattered. I closed the app and didn't open it again. The next day passed the same way, then the next. On the third day, my phone finally came alive. It didn't ring once. It vibrated relentlessly, like something was trying to shake it off the table. I picked it up and stared at the screen. 48 missed calls, all from my father. No voicemails, just one message, sent at 6:13 p.m. Answer now, we need you. I stared at that sentence for so long that Jonah noticed. Mom, he said quietly from the couch, are you okay? I told him yes, even though my chest felt too tight for that to be true. I stepped into the kitchen and called back. For a brief, foolish second, I expected concern, maybe an apology, maybe even a clumsy acknowledgement of what had happened. Something, anything. What I got was impatience. You finally picked up, my father said. Not worried, not relieved, annoyed. We've been trying to reach you. He didn't ask how I was. He didn't ask how Jonah was. He didn't ask where we'd been. He launched straight into it. They were short this month, he said. HOA fees were overdue. Their car needed new tires. He mentioned it like a list he'd rehearsed. Then he shifted to my sister, saying she was stressed because she needed help covering a deposit for a school trip for her girls. He said it was urgent, like the world would collapse if I didn't step in immediately. I didn't speak. He kept going. It's not that much, he said. You always help. You always help. That phrase landed hard. You always help. Not your family, not we care. Just an expectation, delivered like a fact. Then he added, it's not like you're struggling. You're always doing fine. I thought of Jonah's bloodied shirt, of the IV drip, of the drunk driver trying to walk away. I felt the room tilt. The next thing I remember clearly is Jonah's face above mine, pale and scared, his hands gripping my shoulders. I was on the kitchen floor. My phone lay a few feet away, still buzzing. Mom, he kept saying, Mom, are you okay? I nodded because I didn't trust my voice. He helped me sit up and handed me a glass of water with both hands, careful and serious in a way no 11-year-old should have to be. He sat beside me, close, like he was guarding me. When I looked back at my phone, there was one more message from my father. Marcelina, pick up, we need you. That was when it hit me. They hadn't ignored my message because they were busy. They hadn't missed it. They hadn't misunderstood. They had seen it and decided it didn't matter. Later that evening, after Jonah went to bed, I opened the family chat again. I scrolled slowly, deliberately, past my unanswered hospital message and counted how many messages had come after it. Photos, jokes, comments. Everyone had been active. Everyone had chosen silence. I showed Jonah. He looked at the screen for a long time, then asked quietly, Do you think they didn't believe you? I don't know, I said. And for the first time, I realized that answer scared me more than anger ever could. 2 days later, my sister messaged me like nothing had happened. Hey, could you watch the girls Saturday night? I'm wiped from party planning. No mention of the accident. No how's Jonah. No acknowledgement of anything. The next morning, my mom sent me a photo of her utility bill. No words. Just the image. Like a reminder of my role. I didn't get angry. I just felt tired in a way that went deeper than sleep. That afternoon, I told Jonah I was thinking of going to talk to them in person. I expected him to shrug. Instead, he looked at me carefully and said, You don't have to go if you don't want to. I told him I needed to, that I couldn't carry it anymore without saying it to their faces. He paused, then asked, Can I come with you? And that's when I knew this wasn't just about me anymore. We drove to my parents' house that Saturday instead of babysitting my nieces like my sister expected. The sky was gray and low, the kind that presses down on you, and the closer we got, the heavier my chest felt. Jonah sat quietly in the passenger seat, hands folded in his lap, eyes fixed on the road ahead. I asked if he wanted to wait in the car when we got there. He shook his head without looking at me. When we pulled into the driveway, that feeling in my stomach sharpened into something almost physical. Not fear, not anger, finality. I knocked. My mom opened the door and looked surprised, not relieved. She glanced at Jonah, then turned and walked back inside without inviting us in. We followed anyway. My dad was in his recliner, sports channel blaring. He didn't stand. He didn't even look up. So, he said, did you bring it or not? I stood there for a second, trying to understand the words. Bring what? The money, he replied, irritated. You got the texts. That was it. No, how are you? No, how's Jonah? Just the follow-up to a demand. I told him I hadn't come with money. I told him I didn't understand how they could read the message I sent from the hospital about their grandson being hurt by a drunk driver and not even reply. My mom finally sat down across from me, crossing her legs like she was preparing to explain something obvious. We saw the message, she said, but you made it sound a lot worse than it really was. Jonah's hand tightened around mine. You think it wasn't bad enough? I asked. We've seen worse, she replied flatly. You're both home. You're fine. If it had been serious, someone would have called us directly. My dad cut in without missing a beat. And anyway, it was Olivia's birthday. Rachel worked really hard on that brunch. You can't expect us to drop everything over a fender bender. A fender bender. I told them about the blood on Jonah's shirt, about the IV, about the drunk driver trying to leave. I told them it wasn't just the accident. It was the silence. The way they carried on like we didn't exist. The way they celebrated while I was staring at my child's injuries. I said that if the roles were reversed, if Rachel had been in the ER with her daughters, I would have been there without hesitation. Rachel walked in then, glass of wine in hand. You always make everything about you, she said. I was in the hospital, I said. And now you're not, she shrugged. Jonah squeezed my hand again, harder this time. I looked down at him, then back at them. I told them I couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't keep giving and pretending this was a two-way relationship. It wasn't. So you're punishing us now, my dad said. Over nothing? You always overreact, my mom added. Rachel laughed. She'll be back next week. Same as always. Wait until she needs help with something. Jonah looked up at me and mouthed, Please, can we go? We left without another word. I didn't slam the door. I didn't yell. I just let it close behind us. At home, I opened my banking app and began removing myself from their lives in the only way they seemed to understand. Internet. Electric. Phone plan. The monthly transfer I'd set up years ago during my dad's back surgery and Rachel's divorce, gone. The calls started the next day. My mom asking if I'd accidentally canceled something. Rachel asking if I could still babysit Saturday. My dad texting that their card had bounced. I ignored them all. For 2 weeks, I said no by saying nothing. Photos of bills arrived without context. Screenshots of empty balances. Rachel alternated between sarcasm and guilt like it was sport. Then she showed up. It was a Thursday evening. I was unlocking the door when I saw her on the porch with her daughters, tablets glowing in their hands. Can you watch them for a bit? She said. Emergency. I said no, calmly, clearly. She smiled, turned around, and drove off, without the kids. They followed me inside like it was normal. I fed them dinner, put on a movie, and texted Rachel once. I did not agree to this. Do not do this again. She didn't reply. She returned at 9:12 p.m., rang the bell, grabbed their coats, said, Thanks, I owe you one, and left. That night, Jonah asked, Would you let me leave my kids like that? No, I said. I don't want to be like them, he replied. The next morning, an email arrived from the electric company, final shut-off notice. I closed it. They were learning what life without my help looked like. Then the call came from Aunt Lorraine. She'd heard about the accident from a neighbor. She asked how Jonah was. She listened. She said, They've always put Rachel on a pedestal. You've been the fallback for years. It's not your job anymore. That evening, we went to her house for dinner. No tension, no demands, just spaghetti, garlic bread, and real conversation. Jonah played with their dog in the yard. On the way home, he said, They're different. They actually like us. For the first time in weeks, I believed it. The silence that followed felt different from the one in the hospital. That silence had been hollow, confusing, like shouting into a canyon and waiting for an echo that never came. This one was sharper, pressurized, angry. It carried expectation in it, the kind that assumes you'll eventually break just to make the noise stop. By Monday morning, the messages started again. My mom sent a photo of her medicine cabinet. No greeting. Just bottles lined up on the counter and the caption, running low. Can you pick these up? My dad followed with a text that read, Mortgage past due. Let me know. Rachel sent a voice memo, her tone clipped and annoyed. Look, I know you're still being weird, but can you watch the girls this weekend or not? Not one of them asked how Jonah was doing. Not one mentioned the accident. Not one acknowledged the hospital. All they wanted to know was whether I was still useful. I didn't reply. I made Jonah breakfast. I walked him to school. I went to work and focused on tasks that had nothing to do with them. I came home, watered the plants on our small balcony, and left my phone face down on the counter like it was something poisonous. For 5 days, I said nothing. That's how long it took for Rachel to lose patience. She showed up again, this time without the girls. She was already standing by my door when I got home from work, arms crossed, jaw tight. The moment she saw me, she launched in. "You don't get to do this," she said. "You don't get to just disappear." I unlocked the door slowly and told her I wasn't in the mood. She stepped closer. "Mom and Dad are barely holding it together. Olivia's crying because she thinks you hate her, and now I'm the bad guy because you're having some kind of breakdown." "I almost lost my son," I said quietly. She didn't even pause. "You didn't. So stop acting like you did. Everyone's going through something, Marcelina. You just made it into a show." I asked her what she wanted from me. She answered without hesitation. "I want my sister back, the one who cared, the one who didn't make things difficult." And that's when it finally clicked. "You don't miss me," I said. "You miss what I did for you." She stared at me for a second, then turned and walked away without another word. 2 days later, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. It was the property manager from my parents' neighborhood. Apparently, my dad had listed me as a secondary guarantor on their HOA account without telling me. The balance was overdue, nearly $1,800. They were threatening legal action. I called my dad. No answer. Then a text came through. "Didn't think you'd mind. You always cover it." I sat at the kitchen table for a long time, staring at that sentence. That was it. That was how they saw me. Not as a daughter, not as a sister, not as a person who'd just been through something traumatic with her child. A backup plan. That night, I didn't cry. I just opened every account I could think of and removed myself. Utilities, HOA, pharmacy, emergency contacts. Anything with my name attached? Gone. I didn't announce it. I didn't explain it. I simply stopped existing in their systems. They noticed. My dad left a voicemail the next morning. "You're really doing this to your family." Rachel sent a message that said, "When Mom gets sick again, don't bother showing up." I didn't answer. Instead, that weekend, Jonah and I went back to Aunt Lorraine's. She didn't ask questions. She didn't push. She just made burgers, let Jonah help her husband change the oil in the driveway, and handed me a glass of iced tea like it was the most normal thing in the world. At one point, Jonah asked if we could come there for Thanksgiving. "It's quieter here," he said. "I like quiet now." That was the moment I realized how much all of this had affected him. Not just the accident, not just the hospital, but the way my family had drained us like it was normal. When we left that night, Aunt Lorraine pressed a small envelope into my hand. Inside was a note in careful handwriting. "No one gets to decide your worth but you. I see you. So does Jonah." For the first time, I let myself believe it. Thanksgiving arrived quietly. No frantic grocery lists, no last-minute errands. No group chat buzzing with expectations disguised as traditions. Jonah and I packed a small bag and drove to Aunt Lorraine's instead. Her house sat a little off the road, modest and warm, with lights already glowing in the windows when we pulled up. The door opened before we even knocked. She hugged Jonah first, then me, the kind of hug that doesn't ask for anything in return. Dinner wasn't fancy. Turkey, stuffing, sweet potatoes with marshmallows burned just enough to be perfect. Jonah helped set the table, serious about lining up the forks just right. Lorraine's daughter brought out a box of old ornaments and asked Jonah to help decorate the tree. He took the task like it mattered, placing each one carefully, grinning every time someone praised his work. No one raised a glass to make a speech. No one asked for favors. People just asked how school was going, what movie Jonah wanted to watch later, whether I'd been sleeping okay. Halfway through the meal, my phone buzzed. I didn't look at it. After dessert, pecan pie instead of pumpkin, Lorraine's husband handed me a glass of wine and said, "We're just glad you're here." That was it. No guilt, no conditions, just presence. I felt something in my chest loosen that I hadn't realized was still clenched. Later that night, when Jonah was curled up on the couch with a blanket and the dog's head on his lap, Lorraine pulled me aside and handed me a small envelope. Inside was a note in her neat handwriting. "Family isn't who you're born to. It's who shows up when it counts." I folded it carefully and put it in my pocket like something precious. 2 days later, the family group chat lit up again. Rachel wrote, "Dinner at Mom and Dad's 4 p.m. You're still doing the pumpkin pie, right?" My mom followed. "Don't forget whipped cream this time. The kids were disappointed last year." No greeting, no invitation, no acknowledgement of anything that had happened. Just assumptions, just access. I didn't reply. I didn't bake a pie. I didn't open the chat again. On Thanksgiving Day, Jonah and I returned to Lorraine's. The table was full. The house was loud in the good way. Jonah laughed so hard at something her husband said that he snorted, then looked embarrassed, until everyone laughed with him. When we got home that night, Jonah said, "This one was better." He was right. Christmas Eve came next. Lorraine texted, "No pressure, but we'd love to have you again. I've got a ham with your name on it." We went. There was a stocking for Jonah with his name stitched on it, filled with small, thoughtful things. There was a stocking for me, too. Inside was a framed photo Lorraine had printed herself, Jonah and me laughing in her kitchen from that second dinner. Underneath, she'd written a single line, "You're not alone." The frame went on our hallway shelf. A few weeks later, Rachel sent one last message. It was colder this time, more final. She said I'd made my choice and shouldn't expect to be included in family things going forward. She ended it with, "Mom and Dad are heartbroken. Hope you're happy." I read it twice. I didn't reply, because I was. I chose Jonah. I chose quiet. I chose not to be used, not to be minimized, not to be handed guilt like a debt I was expected to carry. I didn't lose my family. I stopped sacrificing myself to keep one alive. And in letting them go, I found something better. People who didn't measure my worth by what I could give them. People who saw my son and said his name. People who showed up without asking for anything in return. For the first time in my life, I wasn't earning my place at the table. I already belonged.